From what I'm seeing, the sentiment on X about the market does lean heavily bearish right now, and it's hard to spot why. Users are fixated on a mix of economic red flags and policy uncertainty, rattling nerves as of March 30th, 2025. Posts on X highlight a few recurring themes. Tariff threats from the Trump administration, like the 200% tariff on EU wine or 25% on imported autos, are spooking people about inflation and growth. One user noted Asia's markets hitting panic mode with forced liquidations in treasury bills, suggesting a broader contagion effect. Another pointed out the S&P 500's 10% correction from its mid-February peak, with sentiment acting like we are already in a deep bear market, despite the drop being relatively modest so far, down just 7% from all-time highs, as one post framed it. The vibe is a cocktail of frustration and fear. Technical traders on X are calling out bearish retests, with group chats reportedly all in on shorting, convinced the downturns got legs. Sentiment polls back this up. Nearly 60% of retail investors surveyed by the American Association of Individual Investors, AAII, were bearish for 3 straight weeks, a record stretch above 57%, way over the historical average of 31%. Meanwhile, optimism's cratered below 20%, the lowest since September 2022. It's like everyone's waiting for the other shoe to drop, some even tossing around targets like the S&P 500 hitting 4,050 or lower, a 25% plus plunge from late March levels. That said, there's a flicker of pushback. A few X users hint at cautious optimism, suggesting today's market moves could be a turning point if tech and broader participation hold up. But the dominant tone? Doom-scrolling paranoia. Bitcoin to 60,000. Solana to double digits, and a sense that deleveraging hasn't even peaked yet. What I notice is how exaggerated the mood feels compared to the actual data. The market's shaky, sure, but the panic on X seems to be running hotter than the numbers might justify. Anything specific you are seeing in the X chatter? You may want to add a grain of salt. On another note, there is a palpable tension in the air on X and beyond, and it's not just noise. It's rooted in some real market signals as of March 30th, 2025. The bearish vibe is thick. Posts on X are buzzing with mentions of massive equity outflows, CTAs, commodity trading advisors, flipping net short on U.S. equities, and sentiment indicators like CNN's Fear and Greed Index flashing extreme fear. The AAII survey showing about 60% bears and just 19% bulls, which is a stark tilt toward pessimism. This kind of lopsided sentiment often screams capitulation. When everyone's running for the exits, it can signal a bottom is near. Markets love to defy the crowd, after all. On the flip side, the data's got some teeth. The S&P 500 is already down 10% from its mid-February peak, and Asia's markets are reportedly in panic mode, with treasury bill liquidations adding fuel to the fire. Technical traders on X are pointing to bearish retests and shorting momentum, with some tossing out S&P targets like 4,050, a 25% haircut from current levels. Crypto's not spared either. Bitcoin is eyeing 60,000 and Solana is flirting with double digits. It's a deleveraging mess, and the bears are feasting on it, arguing Trump's tariff threats could choke growth and spike inflation. But here is where it gets a little interesting. There is a faint countercurrent. A few X users are whispering cautious optimism, suggesting this dip might be a pivot if tech holds and participation broadens. The market's oversold on weekly charts, which historically sets up for reflexive rallies. Bull markets don't die quietly. They thrash around first, and while earnings expectations are sky high and ripe for disappointment, history says tariff impacts often hit volatility more than inflation long term. What I'm noticing is a tug of war. fears winning the sentiment game, but the mechanics, oversold conditions, exhausted sellers, hint at a potential snapback. The bulls turn bears might be late to the party, and that 10% decline they're calling could be a final flush before a reversal.